All right, Steven, welcome back to the show. You are a repeat guest, so it's always cool to have people on more than once. And today, the topic, people aren't familiar with you. They can go listen to your previous episode. Just type in Steven Alfano, Real Estate Investing Fast Track. They'll listen to your first episode. We talked more about your journey, how you got into the business, and what the journey's been like to get from where you were to where you are. Today, we're going to focus a lot more on the sales and how do you convert sellers virtually? How do you convert them in person? This is something you've been phenomenal at for the last 5 years. I mean, you've been doing this at a high level. You've worked with some big investors. Now you got your own business and you're doing big things. So, this is something where, I see a lot of new investors, they get in the game, they start getting leads, but they really have a difficult time having a conversation and truly getting to some sort of an outcome. And they land a lot of the prospects land in like this purgatory stage where they don't really know where they're at with these sellers. And, it leads to people getting frustrated, right? And then they're like, oh my God, every seller's not motivated. And they start coming up with these crazy beliefs. So if we want to start at the top level, right, when it comes to sales, what is your process like, just from a 30,000 foot view, look like when you're dealing with a property owner, whether that's in person or on the phone?
Sure. So it always starts with marketing. So the phone has to ring or they have to pick up, right? And it's one or the other. So I specifically deal with a lot of inbound now. In the beginning, it was always a lot of outbound. That seems like it's the sort of course for everybody, right? Yeah. So inbound takes a lot more money, but with that comes better leads. So process. Once you're on the phone, you need to identify, really who they are and what their problems are. All right. And they need to have a house that they own and they're the decision maker. Right. Yeah. And you need to figure out. So there's all sorts of different things that go into it. But at first it's, who are you? How can I help you? And like, what really are you looking to be solved? And from there, you're able to craft what you're going to do to make sure that you can buy that property at a discount. Now, how do you do that? That's a process, right? So I'm sure that's a different question, yeah. But that's, really what it is get them on the phone, take them through the sales process. And that's your way of being able to close every closable deal, right? 100%. Like, because there's what is it that Chris Voss says on one of your former podcasts? It's not a sin to not get the deal. It's a sin to take too long to not get the deal.
Oh man, that's so freaking true. And that is where new investors get smoked, is they don't have enough experience, or they're not aligned with someone like you or me who has that experience to know, as Todd Toback, one of my coaches, says, is it a pretender or a contender, right? Because a lot of people, they think every lead they get, they're going to buy their house for some reason. You know what I mean? And when you take them through that sales process, you will get to an outcome. It's not guaranteed to be a deal, but you're guaranteed to get to an outcome. And every time I'm talking with Brett, who works, with us, and he's great on the phone and great in person, it's like, we just want to get to a decision and see if we can help them. And I think a lot of people, they get so money focused. They're so focused on the wholesale fee or the profit or the equity, whatever. They forget about the only way you're going to make the money on that property is if you solve a problem and add value to somebody. And, they forget about that. And they're just like, how do I close them? And I'm like, dude, you got to actually, not to Brett, I'm just in general, you have to be able to ask the right questions to really find out if they have a problem. And then you got to figure out, are they in a situation where if they had a solution to their problem, can they make a decision, right? This is where people get smoked, is they'll get a motivated lead, and then that person might not be able to make a decision on the spot. Therefore, they're going to have to get treated differently than somebody who is able and ready to make a decision. And then we were just talking about something like this earlier. You had a deal. Actually, let's just get in. So you remember before we hit record, you told me about a property you did where it took like 58 minutes to get from, hi, my name is Steven, to, okay, we're looking forward to working with you. Thanks for signing the document. So like, how did that whole thing, go down? Because that's a great case study. We'll just get right into it.
Yeah, sure. So I break it down into 3 different things: process, mindset, and repetition. And with all the right things with that, you're going to be getting deals. So here's what happens. I guess it starts with mindset. It's 7-something 30 p.m. on a Friday night. And guess where I am? Sitting right here calling people, texting people, looking for deals, and I get an inbound call from Google PPC. Okay, so I answer it. And what comes next? Take them through the process. I answer the phone the exact way every single time. The things that I say are the exact same thing every single time. And although, I've had this conversation 10,000 plus times, your mindset has to be, this is the most important phone call that the person on the other end of the line is probably having in the past decade of their life, if I'm able to make it that.
That's a nugget. I hope people timestamp that and re-listen to what he just said, because if you just do that, you'll have a lot better results.
It is very hard to do because it's emotionally draining, because you have to be emotionally invested in these people to take action. And so, I have been doing this for a long time. I still keep a script in front of me and I still go through it because, these questions are uncomfortable for me to ask. I don't like doing it, but I know that you have to do it if you want to button up your deals or get them at the price that you really want it at.
100%.
Right. So
why was the lady selling the house? So let's get into it. So you introduced yourself. She introduced herself. Obviously, she has a house for sale. Now, what was why was she on the phone with you? Why'd she call you? Why'd she decide to give you a call today?
She has been working and is getting ready to retire. She goes, I retire the second week of January, and I want this house sold the second week of January, and I'm looking for somebody to do that for me. And so immediately you start asking more questions. What have you been doing this whole time? Because a lot of these things, you just get people talking, they'll tell you the things that you need to know. And it's like, oh, you're retiring? May I ask what you've been doing while you've been owning this house? That can tell you, like, oh, I've been working at Subway opening shift for the past 30 years. They probably don't have a brand new kitchen, right? Yeah. So, there's all these sorts of things that you can do to ask to really find out the truth beyond the surface layer answers that they're going to give you initially. Yeah. Also, you never make a mistake if you don't talk.
It's true. Very true.
So say less. Whatever you think you're going to say, take a break and just see if they keep talking, because they
usually will if they're motivated.
And the trick there is to keep them, in line with the conversation that we want to have. I don't need to hear about, some crazy thing she did back in the 80s, right? Unless it directly is relatable to the disrepair of the property, the disrepair of her finances, health, or any other thing that I can use to form my offer around solving. So that's why she's selling. She's retiring. Long answer.
So she's been working for a while. She's retiring. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong here, she's probably looking to relocate somewhere that's not where this house is.
Correct. She has a condo in a rural area that is well below what her earned wage was, that she had completely paid off, and she was going to sell this house, get out of it, and use the pension that she has and basically live on a fixed income without any debt for the rest of her time going.
So she was looking to get a chunk of cash out of this house to then take to relocate to that condo she has so she can basically live for free.
Barely a chunk. All she wants is her pension, to not have to put any money into the house to sell it. And she wants to be able to walk away with like 10, 15 grand.
So she had a mortgage on this property.
She had a mortgage. She had refinanced it. And that's where all this debt came from.
Okay. So we have the reason for selling, which is a key to a sales process. Now, let's flip over to the other thing that people have trouble with, which are identifying the deal killers that could stall out the seller from making a decision. This is critical.
Yeah. So one of my favorite questions, and it's really what I think keeps you from being able to get people in a position to make a decision, is you don't ask who the other decision makers are. And here is the golden nugget. Greg, if I sent you a contract to buy this property at the exact price you want and the exact day you want, and you sign it, is there anybody that's going to be pissed off that you signed that and you didn't talk to them first?
That is a golden question because it will pull out the problem if the problem exists. And you ask it in an open-ended way like that, so they can't say, oh, you know what I mean? Like that question has the seller naked.
Yeah. And so, who do we deal with? We deal with people that are trying to sell fast for a discount. At least that's who I'm trying to deal with.
That's
right?
what I'm trying to deal with too.
Yeah. And so you need to be able to solve that problem. And it doesn't always happen on the very first phone call. So I asked that lady and she goes, no, I've owned this place all by myself. It's just me. My mom's super elderly. I'm not consulting with her about anything. Like, and that was it. I was like, okay, got it. I was like, so if I did send you that type of contract, is that something that you're in a position to say yes or no to? And either way is fine. And she's like, yeah, like if you give me what I want, I can sign tonight. I was like, okay, let's find out a bit more about this house.
Okay, so now you basically trial close them, right? What's called a trial close. And you found out that the key here, the X factor, I'm writing on the thing if you're watching on YouTube, is if she's happy with the price and terms, which we haven't even established yet, which is you did that like a pro, because a lot of people, they spill their candy and then they have to go run and try to make up for their mistakes. So you trial closed her. She said hypothetically yes, which is good, or no. Like if she said no, like would you be against signing it? Like there's so many ways you can ask it. Like I was this morning on it, right? No, not at all. Anyway, so now we got the reason for selling. We got a lot of the deal blockers out of the way, as they would say, deal killers, deal blockers, objections. Now, obviously, every property I bought had a certain price attached to it. So how were you able to negotiate this deal to where it made sense for her and it also made sense for you to make a profit? Because this is where another step where people get in trouble.
Yeah. So, and doing this without pictures. So you have to just know it really, really helps having experience in this sort of thing. Like, I don't think it's possible to do without it unless you're just going.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And so, you need to be able to take people's words of describing their property in the best of light possible and paint an accurate picture as to what the current condition is. So some of my favorite questions are, and it's actually the first thing that I ask. I say, hey, what's up, Greg? It's Steven, calling about 123 Jones Drive. As I'm pulling up these property records, talk to me a bit about what you have going on. Have you done any updates to the property recently? Are there any major issues? What's your time frame? And then that just gets them to spill their guts right off the bat. And it gives me little things to pick at when I need to ask them something to get them to keep talking. So like you mentioned that you've done some updates. Like talk to me a bit more about that. How old is the roof? And they say, well, I put it on a few years ago. Oh, how much is a few years ago? Like you need to know, like, is that 3 years ago or 17 years ago? Like, so, or 40 years ago. So it could be anything. And then you just go through that. Okay. Have you updated the kitchen or the bathrooms in the past 5 years? No. Okay. And then you can also look at like, how long have they owned it? If they owned it, in the past 10 years, it was probably updated right when they bought it. Like what type of update was that you can see from the last listing? And then you need to be able to comp it on the fly. And that's, a whole nother skill.
So you get the condition, you have the conversation with her. She's basically like on board so far. Now, when you brought the number up, like because there's two schools of thought, and I'm on the school of thought where I want them to go first. I don't want to make the first offer. Some people are the opposite. And I kind of disagree because I just feel like it's easier because like we've got a lot of houses where they wanted a certain price and we negotiated and it was a lot easier because they started first and like we kind of knew their hand before, like, because let's say someone is willing to sell their house. As a little side talk here, it's like if someone's willing to sell their house for $100,000 and you can buy it for $100,000, if you lowball them at 80 and they were already willing to do the deal at 100 because they thought it was fair, then now they're already kind of thinking you're trying to rip them off. So like I always like the seller to go first because I want to just see where they're at. Because sometimes we'll think they're going to have a great price because their house is falling over and they want more than what it's worth. And then at least we know, and then we still make the offer. So how did you get into the price with this lady? Because I love using real examples because it like people can relate to that because this is like a real deal you did, not some, sales class that,
So,
from Sandler,
So it all goes back to the process. So once I ask about the condition, like I package all of that up, just like how you're supposed to package up your offer, which we'll transition to in a moment. I think of it as like almost as important where you're building up rapport. Like think of it as a bank that you put all your rapport in. There's certain questions that you ask that take out the capital that you've put in there because like they're deep prying, like serious questions that, you need to have that ability to connect with them on. So they tell me everything about the property. And then I say, okay, Greg, well, based off the fact that you've owned the home for 14 years and you haven't updated the kitchen or the bathrooms, that, you've had a couple of dogs and, the home has normal wear and tear, but it's not some frat house in College Park. Right. And, based off all of that, say I made you an offer where all you had to do was take what you want, leave what you don't, not deal with anything. I mean, based off the current condition, the kitchen needs updating, the furnace is old, the roof could use the roof actually was 2 years old. I was like, but the fact that it does have a 2-year-old roof and it's in a great neighborhood, what do you feel is a fair price for the property in its current condition?
Dude, you are a pro, and I'll tell you why. Well, you obviously know. When you can pre-frame all of the benefits before the seller can tell you a price, 50% of the time it's going to be lower than they originally wanted because they have like their like kind of want number and then they have like their need to sell for now number. And when you can talk about how you're solving their problem and kind of loosely planting seeds that their house might need work without saying your house is a dump, their subconscious is like, okay, let me think about the number I really want to take for this house, not my, if I can get this, it would be great kind of number. And you pre-frame how you ask for the offer, which you just shared on like a minute ago. That is how you get really good results out of a seller because they're starting to come down to reality. Because when they first called you, they might have been like, I want whatever for my house. But when you have that process established, they slowly on their own come down in the price that makes it easier to negotiate.
And then if, like I talk about the rapport bank being built up, if you have even more of that, if whatever number they tell you, it doesn't matter. They could say $3, okay, do you have any flexibility with that?
Yeah.
They automatically negotiate against themselves.
100%.
So,
100%.
Does it work every time? People are like,
nothing works every time. That would be insane if it did. There'd be no value in it. So
but if you don't ask, you don't know.
If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So she gives you a number, I'm guessing. She tells you what she wants for it. I'm sure you know that area. So you're like, okay, that's probably realistic. Now, how did you guys actually finalize a verbal yes? And then how did you end up getting that deal to the finish line?
So I simply just said, hey, I'm looking at this here and it seems reasonable. And then I transition into actually making the offer. And I say, it seems reasonable, but, real quick, is it okay if I go over what it would look like if you did decide to work with us?
Ninja.
And then she's like, yeah. I go, okay, well, great. Well, I'm finalizing the numbers here on my end as we're talking. My software is running the program to tell me, what my offer is going to be based off the condition and what's going on around. This is what it looks like. And then I just go through like my process on the back end and what happens from, signing the contract to closing. And I say, at the end of this conversation, ma'am, all I'm going to ask you for is a confident yes or a no, and either way is fine. Is that okay?
You take the pressure off them, dude. That is amazing.
And then they either say yes or no, and either way is fine, right? So, like, and that's another thing. Going back to the mindset is like sellers can tell if you're thirsty for their property. So, not only giving them an out, it makes you look good too, right? Like but I truly do not care if I buy somebody's house or not. Like if I can help them, great. Like that's what I'm here for. But like if they're trying to get you to bid against 15 other guys, I'm just like, go with the highest and best. See you later. Like I could solve your problem right here, right now. But if I do that, you're still not ready to sign. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, if you ever change your mind, give me a call. Click. Like
Totally,
that's it.
totally.
So
we do the same thing.
yeah.
Too funny.
So I mean that's how it worked out. So she was like, yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I laid out how I can solve all of her problems. The biggest thing was she wanted to know for a fact that on the day that she wants, that house is sold and she gets her a certain amount of money and that's it. So that's what I gave her.
So you basically told her at the end of, I'm just getting some water in my kitchen. So at the end of the day, what you told her was, she gave you the number. You obviously negotiated that property. And then at the end of the day, when you went for the yes or the no question, she was obviously, receptive to that. And the offer that you gave her, was that offer exactly what she wanted, or did you have to negotiate a little bit?
No, so what I did was I price anchored. So I knew from the get-go, as soon as she called me and like started telling me about the property and it had a 2-year-old roof, that I wanted to do a novation. Because it was financeable as it sat, and the easiest way to make more money was to put it on the market. So I gave her the offer of a cash offer at below what her mortgage balance was, so that she had no choice but to say no. And then I told her about our, novation program that gave her everything that she wanted, including the dollar amount. And all she had to do was sign a limited power of attorney so that I could execute all listing documents and make any repairs out of my own pocket, to get the property sold if need be. And then we put it on the market and it sold for a lot more than what we had it at.
So when you told her you were going to novate it, which just means basically put it on the MLS and replace your contract with a new buyer, what did you tell her timeline wise? Because it sounds like this lady really wanted certainty on a specific closing date, and novations, you put them on the market and then, the end buyer is going to have to get, an appraisal and inspection and all that.
It was a 45-day timeline. And I knew for a fact with where the location was and the product that it was, I was like, this is going to be sold in 3 hours. So
how did you get involved? So you got the paperwork, she signed it, everything. Now let's talk about post-sale now. So now she's selling you the property on a novatable contract, which is awesome. How did you communicate with her the, potential roadblocks with the novation, access, people in the house? How do you go around that to
all of that stuff happens? So when I give the number and they say yes, I literally DocuSign the contract to them while I'm on the phone with them, and I go through everything and go through all of that. And like I tell them, like, when I'm making the offer, part of how you solve their problems is telling them what you're going to do for them. And then also part of that is like how the rest of the transaction goes, right? And like I basically say, hey, listen, all you have to do is sign this paperwork and then put on a lockbox and we'll let you know when we're coming by. And that's all you have to do is, grant access intermittently in between now and the closing date. And then, just be out by the closing date. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. And, it's one of those things where being upfront with people, regardless of what you're doing, like, I always look at it as just tell them.
Tell them, especially with a wholesaler innovation, just tell them what you're doing. It is so much easier, because then if a problem arises and you've told them in advance this might be an issue, they're not pissed at you because they already acknowledge that might happen. And in innovation, like, stuff happens sometimes. And if they know in advance, that one of those things could happen, and it does, they're not pissed because you already told them and they agreed to it, which allows you to have these transactions stick versus some people with these giant sales forces. Get the contract, whatever it takes. It's like getting a contract with not a commitment is a terrible business strategy.
It's awful. So, I know that you handle dispo in your business, and I'm wearing
Yep.
all the hats in mine right now, and looking forward to hiring a bunch of acquisitions people. But like the dispo process, like people can hate, like on the dispo end, they can hate certain acquisition reps and different,
Yeah, because they fuck
companies.
up the front end.
Yeah, because they do just exactly that. They promise whatever they need to promise just to get a contract, and at the end of the day, that's not really solving problems, and it's not scalable, and those deals always fall out because like there's just not proper expectations. So like with me, I tell people, if I'm assigning a property, like if I know I'm not buying it, it's like, hey, listen, you're going to get this. I'm going to be bringing a bunch of my investor buddies through there, and I'm going to find somebody to partner with on this. And all you got to do is stay out of their way and, let them in. And that's it. Like, don't talk to them. Don't say anything to them. Tell them, yeah, if they say anything to you, say, talk to Steven. Right.
We do the same thing in our business. It's the same thing. It's too funny.
And they're like, got it. So like one of the questions that always comes up with the novation, if it's a seller that's usually distressed, they think like, what happens if we don't find a buyer fast enough? And that's where I just say, hey, at that point, we can make a decision together, whether we part ways as friends or I can purchase the property at a lower price.
Bam. Two options to one objection, two solutions to one objection.
Yeah.
And then they feel like they're in control.
And then I just say, listen, do you think that I would waste my time if I didn't think that I could find a buyer and make money on this?
That's true.
Like,
that would waste my time.
Yeah. Like I say those words when people ask that, those are the exact things that I say.
Dude, and what that does is it reinforces certainty in you, which will reinforce certainty in them. When somebody on the other line knows that that person is certain, that's some of the most persuasive stuff that could happen on a sales call, is because certainty is a subconscious kind of like magnet, right? And I tell this to people a lot. It's like when you're really certain about how you can solve someone's problem, the other person can magnetically feel it. They know that you're not thirsty for the deal. They know you're there to genuinely help them. They know that you're transparent about the process, and that allows you as the professional to do what you need to do to solve their problem. I'm getting my wisdom tooth out tomorrow. I'm going to put the certainty in the dentist's hands because I know that he's done this before. And when I got my other wisdom teeth out, it was the same thing. Hey, I'm going to keep my mouth open. That sounds weird. R-rated podcast. And I'm going to let you take this fucking tooth out. And when it's out, my mouth will be sore and I'll be fucking good in a day, right? It's like the certainty is what sells, right? Maybe I'll trademark that. Certainty sells. I think Steve Trang, a buddy of mine, has a show called Certainty Talks. Maybe I'll get one. Certainty sells. But anyway, I digress. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just the flip side to the coin of who said it, Ronald Reagan or whoever. If you're explaining, you're losing. Whoever said that.
Yeah. That's
just the flip side of the coin, right? So that's that deal. It worked out. It was big fee, $60K fee. So,
amazing.
That was in an hour phone call. I wish that was my regular hourly rate, but
So let's start to put a bow on the sales process. So
yeah,
I wanted to do this interview because I wanted to use an example and make this like really like real world example. So when you're out there now, you're going to start bringing people on to work on your team. Now, when it comes to training salespeople, right, which is something you're going to be doing now, are you going to be looking to bring on people that have real estate experience? And if someone's watching this or listening to this and they want to maybe connect with you, we'll put your information in the show notes. How are you going to be able to take what you know and duplicate that into someone else who can work on your team to have success like you're having?
Yeah, great question, Greg, and thanks for the plug. So
I got you, bro. I got you.
I built a training platform that basically goes over nuts to bolts, everything that you need to know talking on the phone or going into a house and being successful and being able to be consistent with it, right? Because that's the whole reason that we have a process, is so that you know what works and you know what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you can repeat what works and not repeat what doesn't work. And
Isn't that true?
yeah, so easier said than done. But that's it. And then, basically it's a lot of one-on-one training and then just working, like repetition.
Swinging the bat at the plate.
Repetition. I have tons of leads. I have tons more that I'm willing to, go get for the right people. So, it's what I'm looking for. And, acquisitions is my favorite thing. It's also the thing that I believe that you should hire first with, because it adds the most to the bottom line, right? Like,
100%, dude. And it frees up a lot of time. Like, I still sit in some seats in my business, and I'm happy to do that. But the front end of the business is where there's a lot of time, and you have to be really nimble, and you got to be really you have to be like nimble and detailed, and you got to be on top of it, because that's where revenue comes in the front door. And then we let, close the door on the back, like open the door on the back end, and the money flows out. Right. So it's like dispositions is more of a kind of a streamlined B2B sale. Acquisitions is more, is a B2C sale for the most part. And it's a lot more EQ, and dispositions is just more like, okay, this is our process. This is how we put it on the MLS, whatever it is. I'm going to get the contractor inside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that stuff is more you can just kind of follow us like a one size fits all thing. Acquisitions is a lot more. You have to cater to people and, work your process, and then take your process and take the seller's personality. It's a whole lot more in detail, but it's critical. It's critical to have. And I'm excited to see, what you're going to be able to build with your team that you're going to be starting up. So Steven, if people, number one, if they want to follow you, I'm going to give you two ways for people to get in touch with you. So if they want to follow you on the web, we'll give that out first. And then after that, if you want to share the best way for someone to actually reach out to you, probably via email or whatever you prefer, if they want to personally, look into working on your team. So what's the best way to follow you, and then the best way to directly get, in contact with you?
Sure. Anybody can reach out to me on Instagram, Steven J. Alfano. And then if you're looking for a job and you want to buy houses in person and over the phone, it's a mix of both wherever you're located. Just go to nofeecashoffer.com/jobs and apply.
No fee cash offer, dude. That's such a great freaking name, dude. That is, dude, that's a great domain, bro. I mean, that is. Do you have a quick question on this? This is some after hours podcast stuff. We'll keep this recorded too for everyone. Now, with your website, that domain is extremely sexy, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of speaking to the seller's language. Do you have your own site, or are you on like a Carrot platform? Like, how do you do your web stuff?
I coded all of it, so
Okay.
It's all me. So it's yeah, so that's a good thing. Hopefully in the next, so SEO takes like 6 to 12 months to really start humming. We're already seeing traction in a lot of the like tertiary markets with our SEO ranking, just because there's less competition. But it'll be a gradual climb for the big major metros. But
no fee cash offer, man. That's smells like a nationwide brand coming soon, man.
Hey, you know me, out there doing deals.
That's right, man. Well, listen, thank you for coming on the show. This is always fun to do these. Let's do another one soon. And I hope you have a great day. And all the listeners, reach out to Steven if you want to work with him. If you want to just follow him, you know how to follow him. Steven J. Alfano, Alfano on Instagram. And we'll catch you soon, Steven.
Hey, thanks again for having me, Greg. And if anybody has deals, send them to Greg. Send them to me.
That's right. That's right.